tired, and most of the time I feel invisible. She's not who she used to be. So we need to be engaged in life, because our being engaged in life gives us relevance. The third thing is relationships. Did you know, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a minute, did you know that we produce more dopamine and serotonin from our relationships than anything else that we do? As far as healthy aging goes in our immune system, relationships are number one. We need them. We're not meant to be alone. And yet, some of you are introverted. You just don't like people, and you'll listen to what I say and say, I don't care. Because getting in front of people, making relationships is going to be more stressful for you. Some of you are extroverts. You're always making new friends, and you're the life of the party, and frankly, you're annoying. In the vast majority of us, we are something called an ambivert. And what an ambivert is you have introverted traits, you have extroverted traits, but in the middle, you think relationships are good, but you don't really do anything to try and build them. You take them for granted. Men more than women. Because why do we need to build new relationships? In fact, I'll not pick on you, but who has more relationships moving from work into retirement, men or women?
Women.
No. Thanks for playing. Men, but nothing very close. Like, Mike, at the end of the session, you and I are not going to go for a beer and discuss feelings. You might, I'm not.
We're both out there.
Well, yeah, feelings, are you kidding me? But the kinds of relationships that become important are the kinds that women tend to be better at building. They are nurturing, supportive relationships. And that's why relationships of that vein become so important. The M in PERMA stands for meaningful and fulfilling activities. We need to do things that make us feel better about ourselves. We need to do things that make us feel engaged in the community, engaged with our family. Now, when I talk to a lot of retirees as they enter this phase of life, they will say, I'm never working again. This is a holiday. This is a permanent vacation. And I got to question that, because we are not meant for leisure. I don't know if you knew that or not. But this idea that now we've got this opportunity for perpetual leisure, I'll talk about this more in a minute, but it doesn't work. Ultimately, we want to go back and do the kinds of things. Meaningful activities are those activities that make us feel that we have value. And fulfilling activities are those things that we do that speak to the values that we have. And so you want to do those in addition to just fun activities. Now here's the last one, and it fits into what I just said. Achievement. When we were all in college, we learned about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. One of the things Maslow talked about was the need for ego satisfaction. It's a basic human need. We need to feel like we are accomplishing something every day. They can be big or little, and here's the neat thing about that. Since you're in charge of deciding whether it's a big accomplishment or a little one, you can decide what an accomplishment is. Grandson, grandfather in the fall are going to rake up the leaves in the yard. Grandson takes the front yard, goes hell-bent for leather, rakes them all up. Goes to the backyard, and Grandpa's only raked half. Grandson said, Grandpa, why didn't you rake them all? He said, because if I raked them all, I'd have nothing to do tomorrow. He only intended to rake half. And who can argue with him that that's not an accomplishment? Because he is now the sole judge of what's an accomplishment. You see, we got our sense of accomplishment from the workplace or raising our family. And now it's up to us to decide. I do some work every year for a group of attorneys who have been meeting since law school. They've gone all across the country now, and they get together once a year. They're now moving towards retirement, and that's where the work I'm doing with them has started. About 2 years ago, a member of the group, Marion, who was the #1 trial attorney in the city of Chicago. She retired. Marion was always in the newspaper. Marion fought the biggest cases, always interviewed. And so the group wanted to know what's happened to Marion. They said, Marion, clearly you're not who you used to be. Who are you now? She said, I was really worried about that. But you know what I do now? I volunteer 3 days a week for the Chicago Catholic School Board. And I help them build programs for kids in the inner city. I'm getting more out of that than I ever got out of practicing trial law. That to her is an accomplishment. Where's your accomplishments going to come from? I'm a big list builder. I like lists. Who's a list builder here? Okay, right? Now, my wife is a list builder too, for me.
Honeydew.
Yeah, the honeydew list. Honeydew's doing some consulting for a civil engineer in Buffalo. He retires at 55. His only plan in retirement, he's going to golf a lot. His wife owns a business. Day one of his retirement, Buffalo, New York, December the 1st. Now, has anybody here been to Buffalo on purpose on December the 1st? Buffalo is the only place that I can think of that has totally defied global warming. So, here he is, 9 o'clock in the morning, he's at the kitchen table. Now, he's already got his retirement uniform. I don't know if you knew this, but there actually is a dress code for retirees. In case you are interested, it's a white terracloth robe with a belt that sometimes does up, but most often doesn't. And you might as well just take a pot of coffee and pour it over it, because that's what it's going to look like. And by the way, for those of you who really do want to go all out in the retirement look, in retirement you are allowed to wear socks and sandals. So, all right. So here he is, 9 o'clock, not doing anything, no plans, no golf. His wife has stayed home with him. Day 2 comes up, and she can't stay home with him, but she's totally worried about him, about what he's going to do. So she writes out a list. Here are the things I want you to accomplish today. So sometime in the morning, as he gets up after a commercial on The View or whatever it is, he goes to the kitchen. This is his list, posted on the fridge. He looks at it. He pulls a pen out of his pocket, scribbles approved across the bottom, and sticks it back there again. No list. He wasn't going to do any of that. Now, as we look at this phase, we have to, I think, make our own decisions on the things that we need to do to feel better about ourselves and to feel better about our relevance. So that's where achievement really comes in. And I think that's a pretty good outline of what happiness can be for you. Now, interestingly enough, this stuff actually fits in to something called the Hardy personality. And the Hardy personality in retirement focuses on what's the best 4 things that you can do that successful retirees do to handle stress. And they're very easy, but they fit into what we just talked about. Number 1, Hardy personality individuals believe that they can control certain elements of their life. We talked about that being self-directed. Number 2, Hardy personality individuals continue to challenge themselves, to go to new places, to do new things. You're never too old to learn. Number 3, Hardy personality individuals are committed to living each and every day to its fullest. And number 4, Hardy personality individuals are connected to their families, to their community, to whatever form of spirituality that they think. Now, if you've listened to everything that I've said, why do so many people think that this is a 30-year-long weekend? It really isn't. Now, the idea that you're not going to do anything for 30 years is actually harmful to your health. Did you know that? There is a direct correlation between the longer you work at something that you like and the longer you live. Think about that for a minute. The longer you work at something you like, the longer you live. Some great research out of Australia this year looked at people who are working versus people who are in leisure and retirement. The research found that if you are in leisure, you have a 25% more chance of a cardiovascular incident. you have a 30% more likelihood of diabetes, a 33% more likelihood of dementia. And for every year that you work past the age of 60, you decrease your likelihood of dementia by 1.7% per year. Now, you might argue with the statistics, but I got to tell you something. Your issue going forward isn't about what you're going to do on your bucket list. One of the issues that we will all face as we get older is dementia. Dementia is not automatic, although for Americans 85 and older, about 50% of us will experience some form of dementia, the most common one being Alzheimer's. There are a lot of reasons why you get a dementia of some sort, but one of the issues is how much you actually use your mind. Now, there are some hereditary issues that are involved, I understand that. But what we find is people who continue to use their minds to do things to keep this going will forestall some of the possibilities of dementia. You've got to use it or lose it. And I can't say this strongly enough, that you're talking about all these fun things that you're going to do, but let me ask you, what's going on if you spend all your time sitting on the beach? Or all your time refusing to read what's out there, or refusing to let your mind go and do something with it? So as part of our plan, we need to make sure that we do things. Now, there's lots of great tools that we can use that are out there. Some of you like crosswords. Some of you are into Sudoku. One thing that I like is something called Lumosity, and I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Lumosity. Lumosity really focuses you on the elasticity of your mind, of opening up new challenges. It used to be thought that our brains die naturally as a part of the aging process, but more and more as they look at fMRIs and how they become stimulated, the fact is that we can allow parts of our brain to die because we don't use them. And this is a problem when it comes for seniors as we get older, so I just want to keep that in mind. Okay, a couple other things I want to talk about. One of the issues that's important are our relationships. Now, as I said to you earlier, relationships are key to enjoying the life that we have. Both the studies on PERMA and the Hardy personality underscore the idea that we need people in our lives. Now, three kinds of relationships that I look at. The first one is our social network. We want to keep expanding it as much as possible. That's why I'm a big believer in places like Sun City in Arizona or Texas or whatever, places where you can go down and it's artificial, but you can talk to people. Now, you might sit there and go, oh no, when I go to Sun City, that's it. Because now I have pretty well admitted that I'm old. Well, guess what? You are. But the fact is that we need to go to some places where we can build relationships again. You have your relationships here. But the problem with relationships is the aging process is pretty lonely sometimes. Our friends move away, our friends die, our interests change, and so we have to keep building in new relationships. Nobody's going to replace the person you've known since you were 14 years old. That's a special class of relationship. But as you think of other relationships, what are you doing to actively build them? The challenge that some people have is they don't have enough worth or sense of worth of themselves to want to put themselves out there. For men, again, more so than women, as they look at retirement and they're not sure what their role is and who they are, as they deal with that, why are they going to go out there and share with somebody else? Not likely. And so you really have to push yourself to be open to it. So picture this. Husband's in the back room. Broncos are on television. He's watching it. I don't know who they're playing, but it's not the Rams, and he's happy. So here he is. He's watching TV. Wife says, you know what? There's a new couple who have just moved in. They look about our age. Why don't we go meet them? He said, are you kidding? I'm not leaving this chair. He said, you go talk to him. He said, I don't need any new friends. Oh, she said, all right. She goes over next door, meets a delightful woman next door who is so glad that she came over. But The woman initially felt that she had to apologize for her own husband because he's in the back watching some darn football game. And he has no intentions of coming out. So why don't you and I just have a glass of wine? So we need to build these things, and we need to look for opportunities to do that. Not to the point that it makes you uncomfortable, but to the point that you add to the quality of your life. Second area of relationships is family. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but for many people, the older that we get, the more dysfunctional families actually get. My mother and my sister are fighting. They fought for 7 years. The fight originated because my mother was going to date again. Somebody asked her out. She's a widow, okay, lest you're thinking she's really having a good time. She's a widow. And so she starts to date this man. And my sister is up in arms. There was some nasty language. See, my mother doesn't have any money. And the guy she's dating doesn't have any money either. My sister made the point that at my mother's age, she has to look for somebody with money because my sister is not going to look after both of them. Well, then the fight was on, and it snowballed. The interesting thing now is my mother has early onset dementia. And my mother knows she doesn't like my sister, but she can't remember why. But that still continues on with the fight. Our family can be, though, our biggest source of happiness, of satisfaction at this point in our life. But I'm going to throw this out there. Do you have people in your family that you should build a bridge to? Do you have people in your family where, you know what, they suck the oxygen out of the room when they come in? And you basically say, that's it. I love you, but I don't like you, and I'm not going to allow you to wreck my life. You have those people too. Now, when we talk family, how many people here want to move from Boulder, this wonderful place, and move somewhere to look after the grandchildren? Anybody got that on your agenda? Already done that? Mike, so your grandchildren are here? Nice. Nice. But what about now you've got all your friends and family here, and you get asked to move 500 miles away to look after your grandchildren? A lot of people would say yes. But let me just share something with you. A lady came up to me in a workshop, and she shared this story. Her and her husband were 65. They were retired. They had lots of money and lots of plans. Their daughter phoned them. She's a single mother. She lives 900 miles away. And she said, "Mom, will you do me a favor?" Mother said, "Sure, what can I do?" She said, "You know, I have always wanted to go back to school and make something of myself. And now I've got the opportunity." See, your kids, when you retire, they don't think you're doing anything anymore. It's like, I'm spending $1,000 a month in daycare. Why don't you come and look after your beloved grandchildren? So, the thing was, move 900, it's only for 2 years. Only for 2 years, right? Okay, so she does it. How many people here would have made that move? It's your daughter. It's only 2 years. And you know where this is going, right? Husband has a stroke a year and a half in. We can't afford to give up the life that we want because we feel guilty about not helping others. Now, I understand helping others may be a value that you have, but then where is your priority? So, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. So, as we look at family, there are some things we also need to consider. I'm sure that the team at Gold Medal Waters has talked to you about this, but if they haven't, they should, or you should think about it. Every person in this room should have a power of attorney in place to act for you when you can't act. Because at some point, you may come to the point where you can't act for yourself. And so it's important to have that in place. Now, third one is spouse or significant other. And I have a true or false to ask you. True or false? Retirement is easier on relationships than when you were working. Ah, yes. If you don't believe me, I'm just going to mention two numbers to you. 24/7. I married you for love, but not for lunch. What are we doing today? I'm going for lunch with the girls. Can I come? No, you can't come. I did some work for a Canadian bank, and we looked at people who are not yet retired. We surveyed them in couples, separated out men and women, When you surveyed the men and you said, what are the things you want to do most in retirement? The number one response, 38% of the responses, number one was, in retirement, I want to spend more time with my spouse. Isn't that sweet? Yeah, Elizabeth, what do you think? No. Well, I'm glad you said that, because only 9% of their spouses wanted to spend more time with them. Gentlemen, I want to be clear on this, or at least as clear as I can be. In retirement, they don't want you. All right? Get a hobby, get a life, get a dog. But this idea that you're going to fall in on each other, not literally, but figuratively, I find a lot of couples in retirement become codependent. So it should be 1 + 1 = 3. In other words, my retirement, my wife's retirement, which are separate, meet in the middle, and it's our retirement. But I got friends in where I live, Bert and Marlene. Bert and Marlene, they retired at 65. They're joined at the hip, literally, figuratively. When they retired, they went out and they bought matching sweaters. They walk around town in these matching sweaters. My wife swears this is true. She said she's driving by and there's Bert and Marlene at the gas station, each hand on the gas pump, pumping gas. Now, I think that's... Are you going to be okay? We have a parfait. Okay, that may sound wonderful, but what might be a problem with that? What's that?
No autonomy.
Well, there's no autonomy, but what else?
What happens if one
What happens if one goes? How often have you seen a situation, especially among older people, whose lives are wrapped up with their spouse or partner, when one goes, they both go? So we want to encourage, if it works in your own relationship, for you to have your things that you do, and she has her things that she does, and you understand her values, you understand what her goals are, but you don't have to have the same goals. But you find a way to accommodate each other. Now, the things that I find get in the way most often are something called an assumed goal. In other words, if I assume that part of our retirement is going to Sedona in the wintertime, and you have no intentions of leaving your grandchildren, then we have a problem. My brother did that. So he retires at 55. He did very well. He's a golfer. He lives in Calgary, Alberta. Can't golf in the wintertime. So what he does is he buys a huge motorhome, bigger than most rock bands. His idea in retirement is he's going to go to Palm Springs, and they'll spend 6 months in Palm Springs in the motorhome. Beautiful motorhome. Now his wife Shauna hates the motorhome, especially what it cost. He didn't ask her. She hates to drive. She hates the desert. She hates golf. And she hates Gary. He said, don't worry, she will learn to love it. No, she won't. So we have to talk these things out. Did you know that the #1 demographic for divorce in the United States is the 55 to 64 cohort? This is a time when it's tough on relationships. Because, well, to illustrate, I travel a lot for a living. I am so in love with my wife. My relationship has never been better. But I think what makes my relationship work so well is the fact that I'm never home. Now, think about that, right? It's a whole new dynamic. When I come home on the weekends or whatever, it's a holiday. It's date night all over again. And if I was there every day, would it be the same? Well, I want to make it the same, but I'm going to have to work on it just to get used to it. Now, our relationship, I think, is strong. I can do that. But a lot of couples are unprepared for that to happen. All right. Some of you are single. Now, I worry about this. What's the average age in the United States that a woman first becomes a widow if she's going to become a widow?
36.
What's that?
36.
36?
It's pretty young, I know that.
Well, I know a lot of old guys marrying young girls. Okay, well, that could be too. It actually is 59 in a first marriage, and it's 61 in a second. 60% of all women in the United States over age 65 are single, widowed, or divorced. I talked to Matt and the team. You know, we talk about retirement as being a couple's issue. It's not a couple's issue. It's a single woman's issue. What do we take from that? Well, first and foremost, if you're in a relationship and you are not prepared to take your family finances over tomorrow, get prepared. You're doing yourself no favor by ceding all actions in your family finances to your husband and then not knowing what to do if you had to pick up the pieces. Now, you might say, well, this turned morbid very quickly. And some of you are saying, yeah, my wife's 59, I'm screwed. But for others, you might look at this and go, okay, one of the things that happens as we get older is things do change. If you are single, our experience is that the people who are self-directed do far better than people who are other-directed. And so what you want to do is just look at ways that you can make more decisions and become more self-directed if you are not. Nobody says that you have to immediately leave the grieving process. But at some point, you have to move on and say, that's it, that's gone, now I have to live, or I have to die. The New England Centenarian study of a few years ago looked at men and women over the age of 100. They found, first of all, far more women than men, that's not unexpected. They found something else. They found that a statistically significant number of women over the age of 100 had never been married. Yeah, no, that's not where we're going with that, but if you make it over age 100 and you've never been married, you had to have been self-directed. You couldn't have sat around and waited for life to come to you. You had to make it yourself. There are organizations that are around in this area, as there are mostly around the world. There's an organization called Meetup, MEET-UP. Meetup is a really interesting organization. It's not a dating service. If you want to go ballroom dancing, there's a group of people here that may be on their own or may be married, but their husband doesn't want to go ballroom dancing, or their wife. You can get together with them. There's all sorts of activities that are out there for you to get yourself out there. And nobody says you have to move into a new relationship. But taking yourself out of society doesn't tend to work very well either. All right, I'm going to talk about leisure very quickly, and then we're going to close. What I find in retirement is that leisure is one of those things that people misunderstand. It's called the paradox of leisure. We like leisure because it's a break from work. So you get weekends off. You work Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, 9 to 5. You get weekends off. You like your weekend, right? It's a break from work. You can do what you want. You get holidays. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, state government, 10 weeks, you get holidays. Now, let me ask you this question. If you had leisure 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 30 years, where's your break? Now, you might say, what do you mean, where's my break? It's leisure. Why would you need a break? Because human nature is that we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Well, illustrate, anybody here taking a holiday that lasted 1 week too long? At some point, you're going, okay, this is fun, but now I got to get back and do something else. Successful retirees actually use work as a break from leisure. But let me not scare you. Work changes its definition at this point in our life. Work is anything that you do that uses your experience, your time, your energy, either to help yourself or help somebody else. Work can be going back to school. Work can be working around the yard building that new deck. That's work. Work can be volunteering. That's work. Nobody said you had to get paid for it. But the things that you do should be meaningful or fulfilling. You want to enjoy what you do. Some of you who retire might want to go back into consulting. Now, I don't have any trouble with that, except if this is truly a time of your life when you want control and you do not need the money. I've run into people that say that I'm working harder now in consulting than I ever worked when I was in the workplace. I wouldn't want to do anything that takes away from my ability to control the life that I want. As far as leisure, you have a bunch of different kinds of leisure. Don't do the same things. You have creative expression. Some of you might want to go back and paint. You haven't painted for a long time. Or write poetry or learn an instrument. You have intellectual stimulation. You have spectator appreciation. You have solitary contemplation. You have physical activity. These are all different kinds of leisure. And so what I want you to do is think, all right, how can I balance my leisure and do the things that are either fun or make me feel at peace with the world? Here's my last comment, and it's something that I brought up a little earlier. And as I'm looking at key words, one of the words that I would put down is time. It's time. And it's time because in retirement you have to do as much as you can, as quickly as you can. You never put anything off. You never take it for granted. Now,